Welcome back to the deep dive. You're here because, like us, you want to really get into the substance of things, understand them thoroughly.
And today we've got some really fascinating material.
We do. We're looking at selected chapters 31 through 33 from the book of Jeremiah, ancient prophetic texts from the Hebrew Bible.
Exactly. And these aren't, simple fortune-telling texts. They're complex, poetic, full of powerful imagery.
So our mission today is to unpack some of the key themes running through these specific chapters. We're talking about restoration, this idea of covenant, a binding agreement, and importantly, hope.
Yeah, and it's not straightforward. You've got real lament, deep sorrow, sitting right alongside these incredible promises for the future. It's quite a mix.
It definitely paints a complex picture. Okay, let's dive in. Chapter 31, verses 1 to 14, starts with this really strong vision of Israel's restoration, doesn't it?
It really does. It's this picture of mourning just being completely flipped into joy. The details are so vivid.
You mean like the tambourines and the dancing?
Exactly. You can almost hear it. And the planting of vineyards in Samaria. And actually getting to enjoy the fruit. It's not just symbolic.
It's about reclaiming daily life, the simple joys, stability.
And that connection to the land, yeah. Plus, you have the watchmen on the hills of Ephraim calling people back to Zion. It's a spiritual regathering, too.
What strikes me is the scale of it in verse 8. It's not just a few people returning.
No, it's huge. From the north, the remotest parts of the earth.
And it specifically mentions including the vulnerable, the blind, the lame, pregnant women, those in labor. That feels significant.
Oh, absolutely. It underlines that this restoration is for everyone. No one gets left behind, no matter their situation. It's incredibly inclusive.
And underpinning all of this is that line in verse 3.
Ah, yes. I have loved you with an everlasting love. Therefore, I have drawn you out with kindness.
That really sets the tone, doesn't it? It's the foundation. God's unwavering love is the why behind the restoration.
Such a powerful statement. Okay, but then the mood shifts quite dramatically in verses 15 to 17 with Rachel's lament. It does. It's raw grief. Rachel weeping in Ramah.
Why Rachel? And why Ramah specifically?
Well, Rachel is often seen as a sort of mother figure for the tribes of Israel, and Ramah, historically, it was a staging point for exiles being deported after Jerusalem fell. So the place itself evokes loss and captivity.
So the location deepens the sorrow. The quote is heartbreaking.
Mhm.
A voice is heard in Ramah. Rachel is weeping for her children. She refuses to be comforted
Mhm.
because they are no more.
It captures that depth of collective trauma, but crucially, God responds directly to her.
He tells her to stop weeping.
Yes, and promises that her work, her suffering won't be in vain. Her children will return to their own land. So even in the pit of despair, there's this promise, hope persists.
Grief isn't the final word. That's powerful. Then verses 18 to 20, the focus shifts to Ephraim. Who's Ephraim representing here?
Ephraim often stands in for the northern kingdom of Israel. And here Ephraim is reflecting, acknowledging being disciplined like an untamed calf. There's regret.
Bring me back that I may be restored. You can hear the longing, the humility. I was ashamed, humiliated.
It's a very real sense of recognizing past mistakes and wanting to return, and God's reaction is just full of tenderness.
Is Ephraim, my dear son. My heart yearns for him. I will certainly have mercy on him. It sounds like a parent's love, almost.
Exactly. Even after judgment, that deep affection and desire for reconciliation shines through. It really emphasizes compassion.
Okay, so following that, verses 21 to 26 have this call to return, setting up road signs, guideposts.
Yeah, it's about making the path back clear, intentional, remember the way.
But then there's that really strange line. A woman will shelter a man. What's that about? It seems unexpected.
It is unexpected, and honestly, it's debated. Some see it signifying a completely new, perhaps reversed social order, a sign of radical change in this restored era.
Or maybe more symbolic.
Perhaps. Maybe suggesting safety found in unlikely places or a vulnerability that gets resolved. The point seems to be that this restoration involves something genuinely new and surprising, not just going back to the old ways.
It adds a layer of mystery, doesn't it? That restoration might not look how we imagine.
Precisely. And the section also brings back that focus on everyday life, rebuilding cities, farmers and shepherds together, even just pleasant sleep.
Right, those simple signs of peace and security returning.
It's about restoring the whole fabric of life, which leads us, really, to the heart of these chapters, the promise of a new covenant in verses 27 to 34.
This feels like a major shift, a different kind of relationship.
A fundamental shift. It starts with sowing life, people, and animals after destruction. Then it tackles that old idea.
The sour grapes proverb. The fathers have eaten sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge.
Exactly. Verse 30 rejects that outright. Everyone will die for his own wrongdoing. It's a move towards individual responsibility.
How big a change was that thinking?
It was pretty significant. While there was always personal accountability, this really emphasizes it over a kind of inherited communal guilt for specific sins. It reframes the individual's direct relationship with God and consequences.
Okay, and the core of this new covenant.
It's explicitly not like the old one made at Sinai, the one that was broken. The key difference, the revolutionary part, is where the law will be.
I will put my law within them, and on their heart I will write it, not on stone tablets.
Exactly. It's internalized. It moves from external rules to an inner transformation, a change in desire and understanding.
What does that mean practically?
Well, verse 34 suggests a direct, universal knowledge of God. They will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest. Less need for intermediaries teaching the basics because it's written within.
And forgiveness is central.
Absolutely foundational. I will forgive their wrongdoing, and their sin I will no longer remember. It's a clean slate, based entirely on grace and this interchange.
Wow. Okay, so after promising this new internal covenant, verses 35 to 40 seem designed to stress its permanence.
Very much so, using these incredibly powerful analogies.
Like the sun, moon, and stars, they're fixed order.
Right. God says, just as surely as these celestial cycles continue, his covenant with Israel will endure. It ties the promise to the very structure of the cosmos. It's that reliable.
And then the idea that you couldn't measure the heavens or search out the earth's foundations.
Only then would God reject Israel, meaning essentially it's impossible. His commitment is absolute.
The passage ends with a vision of Jerusalem being rebuilt, naming specific landmarks, Tower of Hanel, Corner Gate. Why the specifics?
It makes the promise concrete, tangible. This isn't just a vague spiritual hope. It's about rebuilding a real city, a real home. It grounds the promise in their actual history and geography.
Okay, that brings us to chapter 32, which gives us crucial context. Jeremiah is actually in prison when all this is happening.
He is. Verse 1 sets the scene. 10th year of King Zedekiah, 18th of Nebuchadnezzar. And critically, Jerusalem is under siege by the Babylonians.
Things are dire. The city's about to fall.
And why is Jeremiah locked up?
Yeah.
Because he's been prophesying exactly that Babylon will take the city. King Zedekiah didn't like hearing it.
Understandable, but yeah. So in that context, under siege, in prison for predicting doom, God tells him to buy land.
Seems completely counterintuitive, right? Buy a field from his uncle in Anathoth when the whole kingdom is collapsing?
What's the point?
It's pure symbolism, a radical act of faith. Buying land signifies belief in a future beyond the current disaster. It's a tangible statement that, as verse 15 says, houses and fields and vineyards will again be purchased in this land.
Hope embodied in a property deed.
Precisely. And look at the details. They include 17 shekels of silver, witnesses, signing, sealing.
And putting the deed in an earthenware jar for safekeeping.
Yeah, for longevity. It emphasizes the legal reality of the purchase and the long-term view. This isn't just a whim. It's a serious investment in a future only God can guarantee.
Which leads Jeremiah into this prayer, starting in verse 16. He affirms God's power.
Recounts God's mighty acts, creation, the Exodus.
But then he voices his confusion, right? He sees the siege, the famine, the plague, and he's just been told to buy this field.
You can feel his bewilderment in verse 25. Yet you have said to me, buy the field. Although the city has been handed over to the Chaldeans, it's a very honest human moment of wrestling with God's commands.
How does God respond? That starts around verse 26.
With a powerful reminder of his own sovereignty. That question in verse 27, behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too difficult for me?
That kind of sets the stage for everything else he says.
It really does. It reframes the situation entirely. God acknowledges the judgment is happening and explains why, because of their persistent rebellion.
But then he pivots back to restoration.
Yes, promising to gather them back, give them one heart and one way, make an everlasting covenant to do them good, and significantly rejoice in replanting them in the land.
There's that parallel he draws in verse 42.
Just as I brought all this great disaster, so I'm going to bring on them all the good. The certainty of the future blessing is as absolute as the reality of the present judgment.
And again, the promise of normal life returning, buying and selling land in all the regions. It reinforces that land purchase wasn't just symbolic for Jeremiah, but prefigured a real future.
Exactly. It grounds the hope. Okay, finally, chapter 33. More promises reinforcing the message.
It starts with God identifying himself as the maker, the creator again.
Yeah.
and an invitation to call on him.
And I will tell you great and hidden things that you have not known, suggesting there's even more to this restoration than Jeremiah currently grasps.
And the promises that follow are about healing, remedy, abundant peace, and truth.
Restoring the fortunes of both Judah and Israel, bringing them back to how they were before.
And cleansing, forgiveness, leading to joy and praise, even restoring their reputation among nations.
Yes, it's a holistic restoration, spiritual, physical, relational, even international. And those beautiful images return in verses 10 and 11.
The sounds of joy and gladness.
Yeah.
The voices of bride and groom, thanksgiving offerings.
Yeah, life returning vibrantly to desolate places, plus the flocks and pastures, again, that agricultural stability.
Then the second half of chapter 33, verses 14 onwards, gets very specific about leadership, doesn't it? The Davidic line and the priesthood.
It does. The promise of a righteous branch from David's line, someone who will establish justice and righteousness.
Leading to salvation and security. Jerusalem will be called, "The Lord is our righteousness."
And God guarantees the continuity of both the Davidic kingship and the Levitical priesthood. He makes another unbreakable covenant.
Likening it to the covenant with day and night this time.
Exactly. As certain as day follows night, these lines and functions will continue. Their descendants will be as uncountable as stars or sand. It's emphatic.
And it strongly refutes any idea that God has somehow permanently rejected Israel and Judah.
Right. He basically says, look at the fixed patterns of heaven and earth. My commitment to restore Jacob's descendants and David's line is just as certain. It's a powerful closing affirmation.
So wrapping this deep dive up, despite the grim context of siege and exile that Jeremiah is speaking into,
the overwhelming message across these 3 chapters is one of hope. Judgment is real, but restoration is the ultimate promise.
and central to that is the new covenant, not just rules, but a changed heart, direct knowledge of God, and complete forgiveness.
That internal transformation is key. And for me, that image of Jeremiah buying the field amidst the chaos, that's just incredibly striking.
It really is a concrete act of faith in a seemingly impossible future. It speaks volumes about holding on to hope, doesn't it?
Definitely. Even when everything seems lost.
And that slightly mysterious new thing, the woman sheltering a man. It reminds us that restoration might involve surprising, radical changes.
Yeah, it's not necessarily just a return to the past, but potentially something fundamentally new and different emerging from the difficulty.
These texts show that cycle, don't they? Difficulty, judgment, but always pointing towards renewal and God's enduring commitment.
A dynamic we see played out again and again, historically and maybe even personally.
That's a great point for reflection.
Yeah.
So for everyone listening, where do you see those cycles of challenge and hope playing out in your life, in the world?
And maybe also, what does it really mean for something important, a value, a belief, a covenant, to move from being an external rule to something truly written on your heart? How does that change things?
Lots to think about there. These chapters are incredibly rich.
They really are. Well worth exploring further.
Absolutely. We encourage you to do just that. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.